If you didn't get an opportunity to join us last week, this is session number 2 for our coffee break. So we are really, really excited about continuing this session and making information accessible during this very unique time in the world. So we will go ahead and get started. We will have these on our YouTube video channel. So feel free to follow us on there, as well as we will be posting links to these in our newsletters as well as our social media accounts. So feel free to go back and listen to those and listen to a lot of the great speakers that we've had join us. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I do want to make a disclaimer that participation in this online group is completely voluntary. Individuals who choose to participate in this group acknowledge and agree that they are not required to share personal information with the group and may voluntarily share aspects of their protected health information with the group. Protected health information is specifically defined in the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act of 1996, also known as HIPAA. This includes, but is not limited to, your name, address, and specific medical conditions. Should you decide to voluntarily share protected health information about yourself or your condition, you're responsible for that decision, and the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging is not responsible for the disclosure or any redisclosures that may occur as a result. Additionally, any suggestions or recommendations presented during this meeting are not meant to diagnose nor treat disease. This meeting is intended for educational purposes only. Please consult with your medical doctor for any concerns regarding diagnosis and or treatment. All right, so with that being said, again, welcome everybody. Today's guest speaker, we are very excited to have meteorologist Ashley Gann from the CBS 42 Storm Team. She's the chief meteorologist, so she is an excellent advocate for our community, and I will pass it over to her to kind of let her introduce her background, her story, and why she decided to join us today during our coffee break. Ashley?
All right, great. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? There's a few videos that I see, so I'll take a little thumbs up if you can see. But otherwise, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to come and speak to your group today. Me being here is a bit twofold. Not only am I the chief meteorologist at CBS 42, where my goal and aim is to help make sure that you're safe during storms, but my husband and I also co-own 101 Mobility, where we are helping people with their independence daily, whether it's people that are aging in place or those with special needs or any type of mobility needs. We help take care of that and provide them that independence and freedom that they're looking for. So the reason that I'm really here today is to kind of discuss, and my expertise blended with the business that we own, give you tools for your toolbox to make sure that you and your family stay safe. So often as meteorologists, we focus so much on the individual, but at times, especially for those in this group today, you may be the caretaker for someone else. So you're not only just worried about your safety, but you're also worried about the safety of others. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But before I get there, I want to just introduce myself a little for those who may not know who I am or where I work, and kind of my story just a little bit, and why I am so passionate about doing what I do each and every day. So I have always had a bit of a love for weather. I'm a native of Fort Worth, Texas, where I always said I had a natural respect for Mother Nature, being that we were in a bit of a tornado alley there. And I had faced my fair share of scary storms growing up as a child. We then moved to Atlanta, where I finished middle school and high school and met my husband, but we were youngsters at that time. I didn't know we talked until we were well into our 20s, but neither here nor there. Here we are, and 3 babies later. So happily ever after, right? And but with that, I ended up having just kind of developing a love for weather. And through my journey, I ended up getting a job in Montgomery, and where I was actually the chief meteorologist on April 27th. So we were covering the same storms that were moving through North Alabama. And a lot of people forget, because we focus so much on Hackleburg and Tuscaloosa, there were several EF4 tornadoes that moved through South Alabama and created quite some devastation. But that was a day that I really changed my perspective as a meteorologist. Up to that point, it was very cerebral for me. It was very academic. And my undergrad degrees from Auburn in aerospace engineering. I have a master's in geosciences with a focus in meteorology. So up until that point, to me, it was much more academic and application-based. On that day, I will never forget being on television where James Spann and I actually shared a camera of networks cameras across the state. And my station happened to be the one in South Alabama that had access to that Tuscaloosa tower cam. So he and I were both showing it. He's showing it up here in the Birmingham market. I was showing it down in the Montgomery market. And I remember stepping off screen for 5 seconds, taking a deep breath and saying, I knew that people were losing their lives. It was after that day that I became much more focused on how do we protect people? How do we get people educated? And how do we prepare people for severe weather and all modes of severe weather, not just tornadoes? So that was a very pivotal moment in my career. And that's what has led me through my journey, even here in Birmingham, where my focus, even when I'm on air, which we will likely be on air at some point tomorrow with severe weather coming, my goal is that you have all the tools in your toolbox. I'm not big on hyping weather. I don't like sensationalizing weather. I'm not even one that will use language like, hey, we've got severe weather, and seem like I'm really excited about it. I'm rarely excited about severe weather because I know that it impacts people. I know it impacts not only impacts your livelihood, but it can impact your home. It could impact your things that you worked really hard for. So with that in mind, that's what drives me to talk about what I want to share with you today. So for those of you who have joined us, first of all, thank you. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. And I want to dive right in. We'll talk about ways that you can not only take care of yourself, but if you're the caretaker for someone else, how you can take those action steps to make sure you have a safe place. So first and foremost, I always tell people we kind of go through a list. I go from easy to hard, and then that way our plan is in place. I think the plan is the key to limiting anxiety. A plan is the key to also limiting those worries when severe weather threatens. First and foremost, know what county you live in. May sound simple, but a lot of times, and I learn this every single severe weather event. One, you never know when someone's new to an area or not. And so not only know the county that you live in, but also know some surrounding counties. Because as weather moves in, it doesn't always move from west to east like we're somewhat used to, but it can move from the south. It can even move from the north. So it's important to know the counties that surround your county. I always say, know your county first, but you get bonus points if you know some of the extra counties around you. Also know some major streets and maybe some major cities in and around you, and maybe even not major, but smaller towns that are flanking where you live. Because once you'll notice, I actually got an email, and it was the severe weather event that we had on Easter Sunday. And a gentleman was new to Shelby County, and we were calling off, road names and cities and other counties. And he even just sent me an email. It was nice. It just said, hey, I'm new to this area, and I really don't know what's around me, and he goes, and you keep mentioning these counties, but I have no idea where these counties are. So that was an opportunity for me to help him and us kind of work together to learn some of that geography. But again, you never know how new someone is to an area, or even people that have been here for a long time. You kind of get used to where you are. So know your county. That's the first thing. The next thing is make sure you know within your where you are. So it could be your personal home. It could be a home where you're a caregiver for somebody. Know where the safest place in that home is. Now, here's where things may get a little bit interesting, especially for this group. You may be caring for people who are not as mobile, who may need a little bit of extra attention in getting to a safe place. So what I would encourage you to do is to identify the safest place that the individual can get to safely and as quickly as possible. I always try to tell people get to the lowest floor of your house and put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So just think interior room. It can be a closet. It can be a hallway. It can be a bathroom, but making sure that that person can get safely to that place is really what's most important. You'd actually may be surprised that in the state of Alabama, we actually see most of our tornadoes are EF0 through EF2. So that's EF0, EF1, and EF2 tornadoes. That makes up 90% of the tornadoes that we see. And most buildings can actually withstand up to EF2 tornadoes here in Alabama. Now, some counties have better building codes than others. I'm not going to get into that right now. Some counties don't have the building codes. That's a dissertation for another day. If I had my druthers, I think that's where safety would start, is with building codes in a state. But again, that's a whole nother lecture for another day. But with that in mind, I always say that to people because I do think that there's an elevated anxiety that people get with, is this the tornado? They hear the word tornado, but don't realize that not all tornadoes are created equally, and not all tornadoes carry with them the same dangers. An EF0 is much different than an EF5. EF5 is going to level your home, hard to survive, but the chance of us having those in Alabama is very rare. But an EF2, it can do a lot of damage. It can knock shingles off of a house, but we had 25 tornadoes in the state of Alabama on Easter Sunday and not one single fatality. And I'll be honest, I accredit a lot of that to the fact that we're in this COVID-19 world and we are in a shelter-in-place world. People were exactly where they were supposed to be. Imagine if we were not sheltered in place, being an Easter Sunday, people were going out to families' houses, we had church services. I genuinely believe the number of injuries and possibly fatalities for the state of Alabama would have increased dramatically on that day. Now, so my point to say that is our homes are safe. There was a lot of damage that day, but intrinsically there were no injuries and there were no fatalities on that day. People knew storms were coming. They had multiple ways to get warnings, and they knew where their safe places were in their homes. And even if that means going to a shelter. And I'm not sure if we'll open up for questions at the end. I will definitely take questions. If you have access to the chat, I can even pull that up. So if you do have some specific questions, like I don't know if anybody in here has questions about storm shelters, how that works, or if you feel safe in your home. But if you do have some specific questions, I can address that. So again, if you have access to the group chat, maybe you can get on there, or if somebody can look at the Facebook feed and just type the questions in the chat, I'll be happy to answer those as well. But as regards to your home, just make sure you have the safest place that you and someone can get to. Some other things that we can do to make sure that we're protected. We always want to protect our head. That's because it houses our most essential faculties, our brain, our eyes, our ears. And we want to make sure we've got a helmet. And I know it sounds silly. Trust me, no one else is looking at you in your house during severe weather. So the only person you have it's between you and your own pride. So no big deal. Grab a helmet, grab blankets, grab pillows, anything to just kind of cover your person is super good. And especially if we're caring for somebody else, we want to make sure, kind of like in an airplane, make sure that they're taken care of first, and then you can quickly assess your situation. One thing that I encourage people to do is take a Rubbermaid bin, just a little Tupperware bin, and like today, go ahead and pack that with some of those key items and go ahead and put it in your safe place. That way, in the event that you have to take action tomorrow, you would already know where your safe place is and the things that you need are there. You're not scrambling. Most of the time when people don't get to their safe place, it's less to do about warning time, but more to do with, in that warning time, how many things was that person trying to do in a short amount of time. So what we try to do is limit the things that you have to do in the moment of need. So once we get into crisis communication mode, what I'm trying to do is get you to your safe place in hopes that you've already got that plan ready. Yes. Okay. I will talk about, this is a great question about shelter and COVID-19. I'll get to that in just a second. So, going down our list, know your county, know some cities. So the geography, number one, that's easy. Next, have your plan. The next thing on that list is make sure you may have just a little box of some of those essentials. And if you want to put in there a flashlight, make sure tennis shoes are in there. And because if there is any damage to an area, you want to make sure you've got shoes on your feet. I mean, that's kind of, that's why we say wear shoes, so that if you had to step out of where you were, even if your house is okay and you stepped outside and there were branches or limbs outside, you just don't want to go scrambling for shoes. You know, again, it sounds little, but when all these little things are checked off the list, it's good to know. Make sure you have multiple ways of getting weather information. In this last Sunday and at Easter Sunday, we started getting messages that internet was out, or not internet, electricity was out, but they had internet. So the good news there is that we actually stream most of our coverage live on Facebook and our app and our website. There's 3 multiple ways, even just on that internet base, that you can get that information. We recommend your app first simply because it's on your phone and it just works better. If you would like to have a laptop and stream it through the website, that's fine too. It's generally right there on the homepage, cbs42.com. And then a weather radio. I always say that's kind of essential, especially overnight, because you want to make sure that you are able to hear those alerts coming out. And anyone that is in our deaf community or visually impaired community, we also have there's alternate ways for those individuals to get warnings as well. So whether it's some lights on their weather system, or even I know some people have just a little vibration that goes off on their bed that alerts them if they're sleeping at night that there's a warning. So there are ways for other folks to get those warnings. But a weather radio is great. I mean, you can, if you don't have one for tomorrow, I mean, you can order one on Amazon, and that's fine. You can always email me to agann@cbs42.com, and I can walk you through the setup on that. It's very easy so that I can make sure that your weather radio is set to your county. For the most part, have it plugged in, but always have backup batteries for that. It does run off battery power, but you also don't want it to always run off batteries and then not have enough juice in the time of need. So just keep it plugged in, and that will keep it running off the electricity until you need to unplug it or until your power goes out and you actually need to use those batteries. So that's kind of it as far as a plan goes. And also talk about this plan as a caregiver. Talk about it with the individuals in the family that you may be giving care to. Also talk about it with your own family, making sure that everybody just communicates from the youngsters all the way up to the grown-ups. So that's really important. So that kind of wraps that up. And for some, you think, oh, I've heard this before, but I've always learned too that we can't be too repetitive with some of this stuff, because you never know somebody's a first timer. We actually had somebody at our new to our station. He moved from California. He has never experienced severe weather. He was the most scared 23-year-old guy I've ever seen a couple of weeks ago. He heard the word tornado in the forecast. Everybody else had this cool calm about him in the studio, and he's over there he's got sweaty palms, and he was like, oh, what do I do? So you never know. You never know if someone's moved here from a part of the world that doesn't have this kind of weather that we're somewhat accustomed to. So, all right, I'm going to address this question. This is a great question. It says, can you discuss weighing the decision of choosing to go to a public storm shelter during COVID-19 pandemic versus staying in home that might not be safe in severe weather? All right, great question. So my first response to this, so I'm a crisis communicator, and when we are communicating crisis, what we have to prioritize is risk. So at that point, we're not prioritizing safety as much as we are prioritizing risk. In the sense of severe weather, that is an immediate risk. That is a guaranteed risk, 100% impact, all right? Because of that, we would encourage you to get to a shelter. Are there consequences to that potentially with COVID-19? Absolutely, but that risk may not be guaranteed. Whereas, again, a tornado or severe weather is guaranteed. If you feel like your home is unsafe, that's a very important step to take towards that shelter. Now, shelters right now are opening. Most of them are. You will need to connect with your county emergency management agency. So just go to Google and type in EMA, your county. There will be a number that you can call and ask them about what shelters will be opening. Some do have rules that you need a mask or just a face covering, even if it's like a shirt that you can tie around, but just something. They're asking that you try to stay with your family unit, and that as best as possible, put distance between you and the next grouping of people. We haven't heard of any issues. Now, there was an article about a storm shelter turning someone away 2 weeks ago because they didn't have enough masks for the family. Crushed me. Not even here to talk about that. But as far as the individuals who chose to go outside of that one little unique story, and that was in North Alabama, we haven't had any other complications. And most people, I mean, they're taking hand sanitizer with them. Some people are even wearing gloves, even if it's like a gardening glove. I mean, it's just a way to protect your skin. And then as soon as you get out, go home, try to shower if you can, and wash all the germs off. The next thing is that people that are going to shelters have been asked to stay in their car during the tornado watch. And then if the warning is imminent, once the warning is issued, and that means the danger is imminent, they can then go into the storm shelter again. We haven't had any complications with that. We haven't had any overcrowding or anything to that nature. So far we've had success stories with the shelters, but as regards to COVID-19, the risk of tornadoes is imminent. COVID-19 may or may not happen. Hope that helped answer that question. Are there any text messaging systems you would suggest to receive severe weather updates in case internet capability isn't available? That's another great question. Most of the time, the internet and the cell phone are tied together. Yes, there can be internet issues, but if you have data coming through your phone, likely you would be able to get any type of notifications. And with the emergency alert, I'm sure all of you have heard that awful siren noise that comes over your phone with a tornado warning or an Amber Alert. Now, I also know because it goes off with the Amber Alert, a lot of people have gone into their notifications and turned that off. Make sure prior to a severe weather event, you go and turn that back on. That is a guarantee. I believe that there's a fail-safe system that operates under. That would be my biggest piece of advice. That's already built into your phone. Otherwise, there aren't really any text messaging services as much as there's notifications that come through when you download our app. So if you go to your app store, and I will actually show you this because this is kind of cool. I don't know if y'all can see my phone, but let me pull this up for you. So this is our weather app, and you can just go to the App Store, Google Play, whatever best suits you. So it says Storm Team Weather. So it's just an app. So I open that. That's what it looks like when you open it. What's great about this, you can set up all your notifications so you can actually get those buzz alerts. So we'll even do watches, like thunderstorm watches, tornado watches, severe thunderstorm warnings, et cetera, et cetera. We have our forecast, so that goes straight to our website. The other great thing, this says watch live. So this is all your severe weather coverage you can stream there. And then another great feature is this radar, and that radar will show you where there's rain across the state. So even right now, I can zoom in to where we're seeing wet weather. Oh, standby caller. So, I've got that. That's where that green blob is there in East Alabama. So you can literally zoom down all the way to street level. I mean, wherever your neighborhood is, it'll zoom all the way that far. So that's a really good resource as well, because you can track the storms literally right from the palm of your hand. Okay. Address the importance of a helmet. Yes. So the importance of the helmet during severe weather is really just to protect from flying debris. And I will make like a little caveat side statement to this. When we're talking about storms that would create debris, it's going to be a pretty powerful storm. But the reality is we can't gauge the power of a tornado until after the tornado has passed. We don't measure tornadoes until we go back, and we actually have teams, we call them survey teams. And those survey teams are the one that will assess what everything looks like. So they'll take into account how a house looks, how a tree looks, and that's how we measure tornadoes. We can't actually measure them on radar, but what we as meteorologists can do is identify the strength of those. So we kind of just give a blanket protocol for grabbing those helmets. You may not need it in an EF0, but you would definitely need it in EF3, maybe even in EF2 and beyond. But here's the tricky part. You could even have winds that produce wind damage. And like we saw last week, those straight line winds in Tallapoosa County, it knocked over hundreds of trees. And sadly, it knocked over trees at an RV park, on people's houses, on cars. And, fortunately, again, there were no major injuries, thank goodness. But even in those situations, a tree could cause some fall at a house, but the helmet's so important because the helmet will protect your head. And the big reason for that is we just don't want there to be head injuries. Prior to us kind of talking about helmets, we found that head injuries were actually a big cause of injury and even loss of life during tornadoes. Great question. So someone asked, are there any warnings in place for straight line winds? Yes. So we actually had 2 severe thunderstorm warnings. And I also want to press into the importance of these. We tend to be so immune to the tornado word, the red polygon, tornado warnings, that we forget that severe thunderstorm warnings actually can pose a big threat. So to answer that question, yes, we had the warnings. The warnings were issued. There was a severe thunderstorm warning for Chilton County. The difference between a severe thunderstorm warning and the tornado warning is in the severe thunderstorm warning, we know winds have to exceed 60 miles per hour. So even just in a warning, just to be issued, winds have to be over 60 miles per hour. Kind of crazy, right? So even if you see a severe thunderstorm warning, don't forget the wind speeds have to be pretty extreme just for the severe thunderstorm warning to be issued. The difference between that and a tornado warning is the winds, instead of being in a straight line, like in a severe thunderstorm, they're rotating. And those rotating winds is what we identify in the radar. And that's why sometimes say, hey, we have a radar indicated area of rotation where those straight line winds we can see are beginning to turn or to veer. And that's when we try to give you enough warning time to make sure that you're getting to your safe place. So great question. Yes. So driving around during a storm or after a storm. So we really stressed to people how important it is to remain in place. Two reasons. One, during a storm, especially in Alabama, unlike the Great Plains, we have got hills, we've got trees, and it's actually hard to see tornadoes. They do not evolve here, and we don't get these pictures like we do. I would call them more textbook pictures like we see out in the plains, and they take these pictures of tornadoes. Those tornadoes can literally be 90 to 100 miles away, but it's so flat out west that's why you can see them so far. I mean, I can't even see what's going on literally 5 miles from me because I've got a big old hillside in my backyard. Imagine if there was a tornado on the other side of that. Plus, our road structure here is very windy. If anybody has lived any length of time in the state of Alabama, we have got this whole mesh of county roads, highways, state routes, interstates. We don't have a nice, pretty little grid, okay? So we can't just hop on a road and head north-south, east-west. And so if you're in a storm, we ask that you just don't try to drive in a storm. Now, I will mention this. If you are traveling to a shelter, I would just really encourage you to take enough time. Know where your shelter is. Today may be a good day if you can. Drive to that shelter. Figure out what shelter is closest to you and which direction you're going to take to get there. Because we just want to make sure that you've got enough leeway to get to that shelter so that you're safe. And then the reason we don't drive out after is if there's any road closures, debris, power outages, we want to just make sure the emergency officials are the only ones on the roads getting to those places so that they can then restore power, that they can get infrastructure back up and running. If they need to go ahead and cut trees down, let them do that, because the more traffic we create, the more difficult it is for those emergency responders or those utility workers to get to those areas of need to help restore communities and get them back up and running. So the big thing I say is just, and this has actually come through several years of education. So we've kind of developed, so since April 27th, 2011, we really started to do some social science research. There is a fantastic department out of the University of Alabama, Dr. Laura Myers, and I have joined her really almost for the last 10 years in really understanding the psychology of people and why they respond to weather or don't respond to weather the way that they do or the way that they don't. One thing that we have found is that now takes people 3 affirmations to take action. So if that means you're watching television and you see your favorite meteorologist on screen telling you there is a tornado bearing down on your house, well, that only counts as 1. So your second may be, they may go to Facebook and say, well, I want to see if it's true on social media. And then maybe a third's a phone call. So there's a variety of ways, but what we're learning now is people actually need 3 affirmations or validations that that storm is coming for their house. So I think over time, so that could be one thing. So one of the things that we encourage is make sure you know that the storms are coming. I mean, we've been talking about, especially the last couple of weeks, it's just been kind of an active weather pattern these last few weeks. I mean, we're in the peak of our severe weather season, but call family. That's something that we don't always talk about on television, but just make sure that your family is apprised. Like tomorrow, we're going to have storms really early in the morning. And I would say really late tonight, if you don't wake up until 7, 8 a.m. on a normal morning, the storms may be coming through. So go ahead and call your friends and family and just say, because when we get the community talking about it, we find that there's a better response and there's a heightened awareness. So even just the social science behind community conversation, water cooler talk. I know we're not at work right now, but those things do promote a trigger in our human brain that says, oh, I may need to take this event a bit more seriously. The challenge therein lies, we're now beginning to find that weather becomes very polarizing. People view it as an all or not weather. And I think that's where some of the complacency comes from, is because in our mind, and the question, you can go back to my social media, I said the one question I get most often is, how bad will it be? Well, I can't answer that for anyone because I don't know what bad looks like for you. I don't know what bad, my definition of bad is different than somebody else. Like, do you mean fatalities? Do you mean destruction? All of that. So I think even the questions we ask just naturally, we're trying to help create better questions and conversations with people so that we understand, like, there can be different modes of severe weather. So our messaging, we try to be very specific with what types of threats we could be looking at, how elevated some of those threats are. So with the technology that we have. So part of that's education and just understanding, having kind of a respect for Mother Nature. The other is that conversation piece, that social interaction piece that we think has been very crucial in helping communities where there is kind of like, oh, just another summer thunderstorm. And oh boy, this is a big deal. And next thing you know, it's an EF3 tornado in Lee County. So I think messaging and that community interaction. But again, the thing that we found from our research that was very interesting to us is 3 is the magic number for how many, basically how many affirmations or validations people need in order to take an action.
And I think to add to that too, Ashley, is that, just because, if you're in a situation where you might not necessarily think that you need something, well, that doesn't mean that your neighbor from down the street doesn't. So if you've got that plan in place, that communication there, that you can contact those individuals to check on them, because oftentimes, they may need services that you're aware of that they might not necessarily be aware of that could really, really help them out. We did have a question come through. Ashley, do you know of any programs that are in place that allow or that provide free weather radios for individuals that might not be able to get one via, shopping for one or be able to afford one?
So I do not know of them personally, but I will say this. Oftentimes, if you call your local fire department, they tend to have a handful on just supply, and you may be able to get one from your local fire department. I don't advertise that because I know it's not something that they want to, just thrown out there and have hundreds of people hoarding the local fire station.
Limited supply.
Yeah, but with extenuating circumstances, I have found that certain city groups are more than willing to give those away. Again, they don't make that public, but that would be one place that I would say try that first. Just call your local fire station, and they may be able to direct you to some, because the government they do get some funding for those radios, but those are done more through local municipalities, and that information is not made public for TV folk. I guess they're afraid we're going to tell their secret sauce or something. I don't know. That is a fantastic question. So the short end of it is the cost for weather sirens to upkeep and make sure that they're up to date is grossly expensive. So you're starting to see some of the rural communities dissolve those weather sirens, and mainly because it's not really our first line of defense. What we have found through research is that people are very used to hearing the sirens, and even a soundbite you'll hear on television so often is, well, this tornado came out and I didn't even hear the siren. How many times have we heard that? The goal being is the messaging from the meteorologist is, hey, that was actually created. That was a 1940s, 1950s technology that was alerting farmers that there was danger, and they were out in the fields farming and didn't have a television. And so the sirens were the technology of that time. Because it's been used so much over time, we've become very used to them. And yes, it does give us a sense of safety. But the reality is it's not a actual great mode of severe weather communication. Therefore, a lot of counties are spending that money to enhance information gathering or shelters. So they're taking that money that they would have been spending on upkeeping tornado sirens and doing things that are helping to better the safety of the community. And even some, getting back into the building codes, there's only a handful of counties in our state that do building codes. So some of that funding is helping to ensure building codes, because if we have safer buildings, then you're safer. So it all kind of goes together. But the short answer to it, it's very costly for counties, and it's a dated technology. when a lot of that technology can live on the phone. And I know that there's a little gray area, and the argument being not everyone has internet and not everybody has cell phones. But what we are finding is actually more people have cell phones today than they do have televisions. So for that reason, one could argue that my job's not important, which, obviously we're on the digital space, but based on the numbers, the majority of people do have access to a phone. And because of that, we do know that alerts now go out over phones the same way that they would go through like a weather radio, for example. We really want to push people more towards the weather radio, more so than the siren. So I hope that's helpful. I know it's something we've gotten used to. Hey, I grew up in Tornado Alley in Texas. I've heard my whole life. So there is, as strange as it sounds, there's a comfort to that because it just kind of, but kind of rewiring our brains to understand there just are better ways is kind of where we're trying to pivot that mindset right now.
All right, before we end this call, we did want to go over some of our M4A services. If you're not familiar, of course, we do have some staff members on this call. Our Alabama Cares program coordinator that's on the phone, our caregiver interventionist, Ms. Crystal, who's accompanied with Rebecca on this call, that they have a program called Alabama Cares that is a caregiver support program that primarily focuses on, being a safety net, offering services for our caregivers in our communities, as well as myself and Jennifer Fuller, who are the project director and project coordinator for our new PANDA project, which is specifically in Shelby County. We've received a grant through the Administration for Community Living that actually provided us funding to be able to provide services primarily in Shelby County, or only in Shelby County, for individuals living with dementia and individuals with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, who are at high risk for developing a dementia-related diagnosis. So we are M4A. Again, we are the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. We are a part of a network of area agencies on aging that cover the entire state of Alabama. We operate in all 67 counties, and as you can see, we're right here in the center, and we basically cover the counties that surround Jefferson County. However, we do cover Jefferson County for our senior employment program. So we provide services that range from homebound meals to medication assistance to long-term care services, both in the community and as well as we have an ombudsman who is the individual who speaks on behalf of individuals who are in a long-term care facility. Our mission statement is simply, we like to empower individuals, people living with disabilities, and their caregivers to self-advocate as well as live independently and safely in the communities of their choice. And our motto is simply assisting all ages at all stages. Again, we cover 5 counties. That's Blount, Chilton, St. Clair, Shelby, and Walker. And of course, we cover Jefferson County for our senior employment program only. The way our process works is when you traditionally call in, which we do have an online module now that I'll go over in just a second, you can call in through our traditional phone number, and you will be connected with one of our Aging and Disability Resource Center representatives, or what we call ADRC. And what they will do, it's a single entry point to our services that we offer, as well as resources in the community. So whenever you contact our agency, you will get screened by one of those individuals, and they will provide you with resources. Some of our key programs here you see on the screen: nutrition services, caregiver support services, medication assistance. We have a SHIP program that will review like Medicare plans to kind of go over and see what's available, what the best plan would be for your scenario. Again, our senior employment program, we have a partnership with an elder law attorney in the state of Alabama that can help with powers of attorney, wills, advance directives, those sorts of things. We have different elder abuse prevention programs, and of course our long-term care support programs, like our Medicaid waiver that's in the community that prevents individuals who are kind of on the threshold of long-term care entry, like a nursing home or assisted living facility. They provide services to hopefully keep that individual within the community, because we know that care is usually preferred to be in the comfort of someone's home. And of course, our ombudsman, who is kind of the individual who speaks on behalf of the family and the resident if there is an issue between them and the facility. I just went over our PANDA project. Again, it's something that we officially launched it in early April. We were hoping to do more of a public launch, but of course we've had the COVID-19 pandemic going on, so it's been a little bit of a learning curve there. We're trying to adjust and make do with what we've been able to have in place. But that will be something that continues to grow as we progress and get back to what we hope will one day be normal life again. Again, we have our Alabama Cares program, which is a caregiver support program. We are doing this series in collaboration with these two programs to hopefully build a bigger network of caregiver support for the community, as well as other individuals in the community who find these resources useful. I briefly spoke about this a while ago. Traditionally, if you contact our agency, you're going to go through our standard telephone number. You call in, you get on a list to call back, and the individuals will call you to be able to screen to see what type of benefits that you might be eligible for to really help improve your scenario and increase your quality of life. And so now we've actually installed a new program that you can actually just go to our website. If you go to www.m4a.org/referral, as you see at the top of the center screen there, it will actually take you to a screen that you can fill out information to actually, basically do the same exact thing that you would do with a phone call, but you can, do the referral process through our internet, through our portal at any time of the day. So in your own time, if you're calling on behalf of someone else and it's convenient for you to kind of do it later at night or early in the morning, or just a time that seems to be more convenient for you, this will come directly to us. Same process. You will be able to get linked to one of our ADRC staff members to do that same benefit screening, and they will refer that individual to programs that might be able to help. I did not include our YouTube logo on here, but we are on YouTube officially now, so be sure to follow us. We are trying to always get better with the way that we get the word out with our coffee break. Again, this is only our second session. The first session was on April the 8th, and we do have that on our YouTube channel. If you'll just search Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging on YouTube, or you can find a link to some of our videos on our Facebook page as well. We try to constantly keep our events on our Facebook page just to let everybody know, like the coffee event is actually on there right now. We also have a newsletter. If you would like to join that, you can do that by just simply going to our website, and it prompts you when you first get on there to sign up for our newsletter, which we try to include the coffee break flyer in that as well. So be sure to stay tuned with that to get information for the future events. Right now we're doing our coffee breaks every other Wednesday, so we'll have one tentatively 2 Wednesdays from now. So just stay tuned for that. And like I said, we're on all the social media, the main accounts anyway, and then of course YouTube. But we've got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And here is our contact information for our agency. You feel free to, you can contact our agency through our telephone and ask to speak with, any of our staff members in particular. But if there's a situation where you call and you're not really sure who you need to speak with regarding a certain program, they can certainly link you with the individual who needs to be able to answer that question for you. The next one that we have scheduled is May the 6th at 1 p.m. I just got the official word there. So we do have that scheduled for May 6th at 1 p.m. So if you're interested in getting the information to be able to join us on that next meeting, feel free to contact our agency and we can give you that information. As an agency that is a social services provider, we do have to be very mindful of HIPAA compliance, so we try to make sure that we don't make this public as far as the access information to get into the group, because we do edit these videos to eliminate any information that would disclose who is in the group. So just be mindful of that it is something that we're trying to promote out to the community, but you will need to contact our agency to get that access point at this time. Maybe that will be something in the future that gets changed, but for now, that's how we're doing it. So we really appreciate everybody joining us today, and we really hope to see you next time. We think that this series has been great. Not sure if there are any questions. Jennifer, if you want to unmute everybody, there may be some questions for our agency. If you have any, feel free to ask. We have a few staff members on the phone that might be able to answer that question for you. But if not, we will see everybody next time, and thank you again for joining us.